we want to ask why. Why do we run this report every Monday? Why does that happen? Why do we rekey this data 3 times, right? Why does this process exist the way it does? In some cases, why does this process exist?
Because we've always done it this way, Alex, surely.
Change control management, vendor bottlenecks, testing cycles. It ends up becoming months, right? Months to do the simplest small change. Don't chase AI for the sake of it, right? We're living in all this hype. Don't feel pressurized to go and just pick the first kind of AI bot that you come across. That's where Optifi offers hopefully something a bit different. We're not saying don't use modern tools. We're saying use them responsibly.
Welcome everyone to Opticast, the official podcast from Optifi. I'm Alain Egre, I'm COO and our co-founder. And in this particular episode, I'm really looking forward to actually exploring a little bit deeper how enterprise technology is evolving, what that potentially means for the trust and corporate services sector, especially some of those hot topics like AI, and of course, building on that as well, exploring the art of the possible and how that could perhaps mean. But I am very lucky today to be joined by our CTO and co-founder, Alex Steele, all the way from sunny Glasgow. Thank you for bringing the weather. But a man who genuinely does know how to build platforms at scale and has had a wealth of experience in that industry. So, Alex, welcome.
Thanks, Al. Great to be here.
Amazing. So, love to just kick off with something that for our listeners and for those perhaps who are tuning in who don't perhaps know who we are and what we're about. Can you tell me a little bit deeper and pull the thread on what is Optifi?
Yeah, I suppose simply, we are wanting to be FNZ for the trust company sector. We're launching with kind of 2 primary offerings. For Trustcos, we want to digitize every business process, consolidate it all under a single pane of glass. It's all going to be in one place. It's going to be accessible anywhere, everywhere. It's always going to be on. So you don't need to worry about getting it. Secondly, family offices, something similar, but tuned for the kind of small, the smaller kind of nimble company. We'll provide that in a box essentially, and wrap full environment care round about that. So small family offices can concentrate on being great family offices, and we'll do everything that's in the box.
I love that. That is just beautifully articulated and incredibly clear, genuinely. So building on that, in fact, actually, to change the subject slightly, I know you've had such a wonderful, varied career as well. Can you tell me something a little bit about that?
Yeah. I've been working in industry, the financial services industry for probably 30 years now. A large part of my career was providing technology platforms for Barclays stockbrokers. It's maybe an old brand name that maybe some people don't recognise. It was kind of rebranded as Smart Investor, but at the time we were super successful, #1 stockbroker in the UK. But nothing quite brings out the importance of scalable and resilient technology as surviving the boom and bust cycles associated with equity trading. It's frenetic, exhilarating, and mildly terrifying at the same time. It's a retail platform, get hundreds of thousands of customers trying to urgently trade in these kind of boom and bust cycles. And you've got a call center, right? Furiously trying to handle all this call volume. Your systems need to stay up, right? They need to stay up. They need to be super resilient, because you'll have the business literally screaming at you to make sure everything is staying up, right? But we survived it, right? And it was so exciting, so exhilarating, and I was really proud of the team, my wider team, to make sure, because a number of our other competitors didn't. They never stayed up, and so we were out there in the market trading whilst others were down.
It's an incredible, you're right. It's an incredible thing and a huge undertaking that I know you guys took through, being a fellow Barclays alum actually, and also and also actually being strangely a Barclays stockbroker client at the time, because my blood was running blue. I can remember that transition, and it was beautifully handled. So I suppose if I bring you a little bit more into the future and think about, or perhaps a little bit more than now, can you tell me a little bit about what you're working on right now?
Yeah, so this is really exciting. Yeah. We're working on our V1 of Optifi, right? The first version of the platform. We're finally cutting code, getting something created. I love creating stuff, right? That's what it's all about. Getting stuff out the door. So we're focusing on the container to manage any workflow, all the approval processes within an organization, within a trust group. This builds a really, really strong foundation for our grand vision, which I'm sure we'll get into later in this chat. It's built for multi-tenancy, right? So we can handle multiple trust companies at the same time, keep all their data secure and isolated. Yeah, it's really, really important. It's highly secure, full integration with Microsoft 365 with multi-factor authentication. One login. Don't need to worry about any separate logins. It's designed to auto scale and be highly resilient. Leveraging all the benefits of cloud computing. We're using Microsoft Azure as our cloud provider, which is just gives us everything we need to build a modern enterprise technology platform. But we're also building an integrated control framework, which I think is something super important for Trustco industry. It'll be flexible, fully transparent. We're integrating diagnostics and metrics into the foundation, right into the ground, right, to seamlessly build out KPIs and other insights that are really, really hard to reverse into legacy applications, right? So we're really, really fortunate to be able to do this. You don't often get the opportunity to start from the ground up, start at the greenfield, but it's worth a bit of extra thinking time to get all this stuff right from the outset. But that's all in our V1. We're also recognising the opportunities and the importance of AI in general, and we'll definitely be talking about that more in the future in this podcast and in future episodes. But we're building our first AI agents, which will be importantly seamlessly integrated into the platform. So they're not going to sit separate. You don't have to toggle over. They're going to be integrated into the overall experience. So really, in a nutshell, we're designing, documenting, digitizing 20 years of kind of collective experience.
Indeed, and actually, when you start bringing that to bear with some of the themes, some of the topics, which I know will resonate with the trust and corporate services industry, certainly, the Azure tenancy, the Microsoft interoperability, and of course the art of the possible, the AI. It's a really exciting thing to delve into.
Powerful proposition, right? It's going to be a powerful proposition.
Indeed. So I'd love to be able to connect that up a little bit actually with some of your past experience, that that deep domain expertise that you clearly have in the technology space. How do you feel your past experience actually sort of has helped shape what we're building and the vision of?
Yeah, so I spent 25 years at Barclays. So I've been through various generations of technology delivery. As I mentioned earlier, when we're talking about the kind of boom and bust cycles, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of retail customers, right? That really brings things into focus, into sharp focus. And also, it wasn't just about, delivering kind of retail web propositions at an advent of the internet, because, the business started off effectively as actually started off in paper form, right? And then came along the advent of the call center. And then
I remember the call centers.
I remember the call centers. It was huge. It was hundreds and hundreds of people in call centers. And then that transitioned into the internet. The internet became a thing, and you wanted to provide all your services on the internet. So we were building the first internet kind of services. I always remember we had.
It's amazing how quickly these things move on.
Oh
right?
yeah, this I'll be showing my age now. Right, I'll be showing my age now. But we had
it's grey in this beard. Don't worry.
we had something called WAP phones, right?
WAP phone.
WAP phones. So it was a little Nokia. They're really cool. They were a flip phone, and we actually built a kind of first kind of web interface for this phone. It's like completely monochrome, grayscale. But it allowed you to trade on a WAP phone, on a little Nokia. Yeah. So we were at the kind of cutting edge.
Especially thinking 20,
right.
15 years ago.
So I like to think I've had lots of exposure to effectively scaled systems, learned many lessons, like some avoid vendor lock-in.
Yeah, indeed.
Keep things nice and modular, composable architecture, reduce integration complexity. Integration complexity can be a real challenge. But I like to think I've seen all that, and I've had many successful project deliveries, but I've also had exposure to many of the pitfalls. Yeah, and they call that scars, right? It's the scars of life. It's the
scars and certificates.
The scars and certificates.
In equal measure.
And I think those scars are just as valuable, if not more valuable, than the things that we learn doing well. So that's what I want to bring to this, to the new tech platform.
It's really great to hear that. It genuinely really is, and would it be wonderful to explore a little bit deeper with you as well is, of course, what we're trying to build, all that, a lot of experience in an adjacent industry in the wealth management, the private banking space. How do you feel that can relate to the trust and corporate services sector, and why should we start there?
Yes,
certainly with our product.
Yeah, so I think trust and corporate services. I've worked in a number of kind of complex industries, right? Primarily in the wealth space, the retail space. It is complex. It's trading. It's full end-to-end trading. But I think trust and corporate services, it's another kind of high complexity industry.
Indeed.
But there's low levels of automation, and that, for me, represents a huge and exciting transformation opportunity. There's so much kind of fragmentation here, and bringing some order to that somewhat kind of chaotic environment is something that personally really motivates me. I love solving problems, right? And I think,
can see that. It's beautiful to watch, actually.
And
you're a machine.
I really do like. I get that. I like avoiding politics and delivering stuff and making people happy, right? So I think I'm most satisfied when I'm doing that, right?
It's a good way to treat life, isn't it?
But I think again, speaking to some of my kind of historical kind of experience, I think I spent multiple years of my life moving to something called a kind of BPASS model. So Barclays stockbrokers transition to.
Can you just pull the thread for anyone listening? What does BPASS mean?
So it stands for Business Process as a Service, and essentially it allows organisations to kind of outsource their operational capability and their technology capability. Now, it's never clean cut. It's never just like, we're just going to flip the whole thing across. Inevitably, with this, there's a lot of kind of integration complexity that I touched on earlier. What the provider delivers is never quite as clean cut as you would like, and you have to integrate it into the wider kind of ecosystem. But I spent a lot of time doing that, and I think that model, is a real possibility for introducing efficiency into this sector. And it's something we'd love to, speak to people about. But I have genuinely first-hand experience of making that happen within wealth, and I think those lessons learned around trying to deliver that. It was multi-year, something that was so large, so complex. I'm not going to tell you how much it cost because it was insanely expensive. But I think I'm in a great position to apply that kind of sound judgment, right? And create a much smarter and quicker path to BPASS for this sector, should people want to do it. Yeah.
I hear you, and that, I agree, it kind of makes a lot of sense. That path to smarter, quicker, more demonstrable value is what we know the industry, or we believe the industry is looking for.
Yeah.
And of course, through building Optifi, Alex, you've had the chance to actually talk to the industry and hear their voice, and through some of that. And if we take perhaps some of your learnings around the tech in the sector and your understanding, a lot of them, of course, already have platforms in place, right? Many of them are quite mature and well established.
Mm-hmm.
Is anything missing there, you think, that the industry needs to address?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a good point. They're all the incumbent providers. They're all big, large, mature platforms. If you go to any sector, there's lots of these kind of big platforms, right? But they're really hard to change. They've got mature feature sets, yes, but I've been here. Before, right? I've been in this position. They are difficult to change rapidly.
They are,
right? So the industry doesn't stop, right? The regulations don't stop. It's quite hard to keep pace with customer needs, regulation. It's inevitable gaps will start emerging within these platforms. Tech, think of the advancements in tech in the last few years is crazy. We'll get into that more later.
It is exciting, right?
But how do these kind of big players really embrace some of these kind of challenges? Gaps appear, right? So, and I think that's what we're seeing. Then Trustco start trying to plug these gaps, right? Because they can't wait on the incumbent providers to plug them. They're trying their best, but they just can't physically try. It's just too challenging. So they start. What happens is Trustco's then start plugging the gaps with like Power Apps or spreadsheets. Classic example, right? Use a complicated Excel spreadsheet to run a business process.
It's 2025. There's still a lot of Excel spreadsheets running the world. Right?
Still a lot of access databases out there as well. Remember using them in the early 90s, and they're still
I can
around.
Remember building one actually and leaving it as a legacy.
And we've seen similar to kind of Power Apps in some way, but Alteryx workflows to try and kind of piece things together. It's really as a kind of patchwork.
So are we seeing? Do you feel like you're sort of seeing firms try to customize their platforms a little bit to fit better? Is there a question around customization versus standardization?
Yeah, I think I'm of views, right? Customization there's always a temptation to customize, but when they go to the vendors, it's probably exceptionally expensive. We've seen clients quoted, tens of thousands of pounds, right, just to get even a few fields added in or a bespoke report. It's expensive undertaking. Add in, change control management, vendor bottlenecks, testing cycles. It ends up becoming months, right? Months to do the simplest small change. Something relatively basic, right? And then I think in this, speaking more as a kind of technologist, right? There's a kind of ceiling with customization, right? Your architecture. It's generally, if you go down too many customizations, the architecture makes it completely unmaintainable. Yeah, and that creates a massive kind of drag effect for the platform providers, right? Which then exacerbates the first point. It makes it more costly to get the change. It takes longer to do the change.
So do you feel there's a way to kind of maybe turn that in its head for both this industry and for technology, and really to kind of think about, maybe not tearing everything out or apart, making sure the world's a little bit more connected? Is that where the opportunity lies?
Yeah, I think so. And I think I think we're in a completely unique position, right? We've got the ability to build a kind of modern, modular alternative to that. But you have to recognise the legacy as well. So it's not going away. and you need to find a path to get from kind of the legacy to the modern. What we need to provide is that kind of modern modular platform, but let it work, kind of alongside the legacy, and then ultimately with a view to kind of replacing the legacy, over time. We're talking about kind of API first kind of principles. Cloud native, as I mentioned, we're cloud native. We're fully on the cloud, and we're going to build it around how trust administrators actually work, because we're out talking to all of them, right? That's what we're doing. We're really super keen on collaborating. We do a lot of listening, and discussing and shaping with the people that are going to use it. So it's all about really defining this platform.
A wonderful, refreshing, and very disruptive approach, indeed. So what I'd love to spend a little bit of time sort of exploring with you, I know an area that's probably quite close to your heart is that enterprise technology. Of course, we delved into, the trust code text, what some of the challenges are, what some of the opportunities are, of course, and aligning that to some of the wider adjacent industries. But I'd love to hear from you or get your thoughts on, what's happening in enterprise tech a little bit more broadly, and what do you think sort of, at least, sort of the trust corporate services sector should be paying attention to?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's been it's probably been a generational kind of change in the enterprise tech landscape. It's happening as we sit here talking about it. And it's the pace of growth. I've never seen pace of change so great as what I'm seeing today.
It's invigorating, right?
It really is.
Energizing.
It's a great time to be doing this, right? It's an absolutely great time. You need to grasp it and do something with it. But you're seeing a real kind of rise in composable platforms, low code development, which we'll come on to in a second, and obviously that push towards kind of AI augmentation, woven into kind of business processes. I don't think in other industries sectors that there really is a move away from kind of monolithic platforms. There's no lock-in anymore, right? Things are going far more modular. You're talking about APIs, microservices, and workflows actually fit the way people want to work. But for me, AI is the kind of big
shift.
Revolution, right? And I'm super excited about that.
So what it also feels like you're saying, though, if I can touch on one element, is that people are kind of building their own tooling a little bit, exploring that, or at least trying to shape it a little bit to fit their processes. Is that fair to say?
I think that is very much the case. I think there's a kind of democratization of kind of technology happening with a lot of these kind of low code tools. Never have tooling, kind of the ability to shape your organization on your own. Never has that been so easy and cheap to do, right? You get a lot of these tools bundled in with your Microsoft 365 enterprise subscription. So they're there, so people will naturally start picking them up and start using them. So the internal teams within these organizations, they're empowered to build solutions, I guess, with Power Platform, or the tools also allow them to integrate other kind of third-party kind of SaaS products into the platform as well. But there is a nuance, right? To this. There is a but. That kind of empowerment introduces some kind of real risks. We've seen firms kind of build mission critical kind of workflows in Power Apps, or Power Automate, without any kind of documentation, version control, proper security. Someone stores them in a OneDrive or in a network folder or something like that, and they're running with personal credentials, and they're right. What happens when the person literally leaves or their password expires and it stops working?
You're taking me back, Alex, to my days at Barclays, where this is when I did play around with a little bit of VB script
Oh,
for
yeah.
the things.
Yeah.
And I used to create a few little things or a few cheeky little macros that would try to automate stuff. And they called them grey apps, grey
That's right, grey
applications.
apps, yeah.
And I left 48 of those.
48, I know. It's amazing how many. You end up with hundreds of these grey apps. And no one can afford to replace the grey apps.
Indeed, and they become,
they
quite
become mission
fundamental.
critical. They're fundamentally critical. Because everyone's expertise is encapsulated in these grey apps and VB script or within an particularly in an Excel macro.
Can you even still write in VB script these
Yeah,
days?
yeah, you can. Well,
so does it feel then that flexibility is a bit of a liability for you there then?
Yeah, it's a classic kind of what we call I think grey apps is a term, but it's shadow IT.
Shadow
problem.
IT.
Yeah, the low code tools do offer incredible value. They're incredible value and valuable, but they need real structure. Otherwise, you end up with a real kind of fragmentation of the overall kind of ecosystem, right? And you've got all these kind of one-off solutions, point solutions scattered around. They don't scale, and they're really kind of hard to support. But that's where Optifi offers hopefully something a bit different. We're not saying don't use modern tools. We're saying use them responsibly within a platform that offers kind of scalability, stability, and supportability, and in some ways kind of like guided modularity. Giving firms flexibility, but within a framework that's secure, supportable and future-proof. So we're helping them. Doing maybe very, very small things using low code, but we've built a, they're operating within a structure. We may be doing some of the kind of real kind of hard stuff. Yeah. But so we're not trying to say, you're just put all that stuff in the bin. Yeah. We recognise they're there, right?
Yeah. You connect them. So it's about that connection. What you're saying is about that connection, about that orchestration, about that integration. If I can take you a little bit lower or deeper into that, or at least part of the puzzle, what about data? It feels like that's another big piece for us to kind of explore alongside the tech and the API, right? Digital gold.
Yeah, I know. Digital gold. It's a good term. I like that. Let's take a note of that one. I'll take a note of that one. We'll get into our market material.
To mine it.
In the enterprise world, data's become a kind of active asset. It's not just something you store, but something you really have to analyze it, model it, use it to make informed decisions. You've got kind of real-time dashboards, predictive analytics, machine learning models on top of finance and client data. But I think that's certainly that was certainly the norm in the kind of wealth sector, but it's not necessarily the norm in the trust sector. So we're still seeing a lot of people kind of exporting data. Oh no, I need to get it out. I need just give me the data. I need the data out into Excel, right? And then I'll start playing around with it. And you end up running maybe like a bespoke report or query in a silo over there, right? Yeah. So there's often no kind of central kind of data management platform or a data lake. There's no semantic layer to give you that kind of understanding of the data.
So you feel there's an opportunity there.
Huge.
You feel it's not just about efficiency. There's an opportunity for insight, perhaps, sort of more on the pulse, more direct, more consumable.
Absolutely. Yeah. And almost in real time. I think that's the key. You just want to literally just talk, almost calling a talk into the system and get out. We want, just a couple of examples. Imagine being able to spot, kind of client structures that are likely to generate, kind of compliance issues. Yeah. In real time almost, right? Or surface potential kind of fee leakages, right? Or forecast workloads based on upcoming distributions or filings, or imagine having, you'll have your kind of standardized reports, but imagine just being able to kind of engage ad hoc with the platform. Yeah. Ask it a question in your own natural language, and you get it there and then. You get the query there and then. You can get it formatted in the way you want it there and then.
For me, that's a great example, Alex, because for me it's always been about the so what. So how can I, genuinely get my sort of finger on the pulse and actually take demonstrable actual action off the back of, the insights that we have, and allowing obviously our clients or any clients in the industry to be able to sort of move that forward, right? Slightly awkward question. How far behind do you feel the trust sector is based on your humble experience today and the conversations that we've had, based on, of course, the adjacent wealth management, private banking, and retail industries?
Yeah, I think it is behind, right? I think we need to kind of recognise that, but not irreversibly. And I think we've got techniques to accelerate things, right? And basically bring us to parity with other sectors. But what you do need though is a kind of coherent platform that brings it all together. Modern, extensible, and tailored to how the kind of fiduciary businesses really can operate. And that, that's what we're trying to do, right? That's ultimately why we're here.
Beautifully aligns of bringing that, quite right, the data, the automation, the enterprise technology. I suppose that gives us a kind of very natural stage actually to potentially move on.
Yeah, it's the best of modern enterprise tech, kind of composability, some modularity, AI, automation.
Indeed.
Combine it with a deep understanding, right? Which you, Stuart, Tish, Cara, everyone in the team has of how this industry works, right? So we're not just replacing what's there. We're generally, trying to help them leap ahead and get parity with other sectors.
Indeed. And to make the most of that opportunity. And if you think, again, if I sort of then allow me to take you on a slightly different tangent, but also hopefully very, very well aligned, which is, I know a subject which is probably, I can see excites you a lot, actually. you may talk a little bit more about the art of the possible later, but also as far as the sector goes, the application of that current buzzword, right, artificial intelligence, and how that can practically kind of play out in the industry. So we see how the enterprise tech's evolving. It's everywhere, right? Yeah. But what's it really mean for us and for this industry?
Yeah, AI, it's a great question. Right, it's a real topic close to my heart. I'm really excited about this. Right?
Yeah,
I'm really excited about this.
And that's nice to see as well.
I go to bed thinking of this. Right? I wake up in the middle of the night thinking of this stuff. Right,
3 a.m. Opportunity.
It's moving so fast. It's hard to keep up. It comes with a lot of hype, but I think it comes with some, certainly at the moment, unrealistic expectations. Right, so we need to apply some caution towards it. Right, but that's not to say there aren't any kind of very real applications of that tech to use now. You do need to take a bit of step back and try and work out what are the practical applications of AI, right? So that you can use them. But it's really not about replacing humans, right? That's not what it's about. It's about or making flashy chatbots, right? Yeah, everyone and their dog seems to be bringing out another flashy kind of chatbot. So, which again, it's going to be another app sitting over here, right? It's not going to be integrated. This is more about augmenting people's work, automating the mundane, the repetitive tasks, and using AI to surface insights that would otherwise be hidden in a mountain of data. We accumulate so much data. People have maybe heard about big data, right? It's been a thing for a while now, right?
Indeed, I remember the days of big data.
We're just accumulating so much data all the time, right? It's like constant. So how do you possibly analyze that data and do it in real time? The tools are there. AI gives you the tooling to be able to analyze that data now, and that's fundamentally one of the kind of big opportunities that we've got.
Indeed, and there's probably few people that are either listening to this or that you're going to come across in a working environment that is not using a large language model, right, to augment or try and drive some element of productivity in the world. So, do you perhaps have a couple of decent examples of how this might apply in our sector?
And I
Or
think
some of the things you're thinking about?
we've been thinking a lot. I work a lot with Cara, who's our amazing kind of chief product officer, and we talk about this all pretty much every day, right? Every day, and we are concentrating on trying to define the real kind of practical examples, right? That are going to add value, immediate kind of demonstrable value. So one example could be like document processing, right? So the trust and corporate services kind of sector, they generate tons of paperwork, kind of drowning in paper.
We do. There's 1 or 2
Corporation
days.
docs, trust deeds, correspondence, KYC forms, filings. AI powered document ingestion. Imagine that just kind of automatically extracting key data points in kind of real time. Automatically classifying documents and flagging anomalies within the document set. Right, you could save huge amounts of manual effort. Right, imagine nobody you have to troll through all that. In fact, you'd miss it. You'd miss documents, right? Another fantastic use case which we're really keen on launching is one of our kind of first practical use cases is natural language querying. It's really powerful. This is our natural mode of conversation. We are using natural language
on top of structured data, right?
On top of structured and unstructured data as well. Yeah. Interestingly, so you can apply this. So instead of sifting through, complex reports, multiple systems, you just ask the chatbot in plain English, like you and me chatting to each other, right? And show me all trust with distributions due this quarter, and then you get it there and then in real time. Boom.
Give me the recovery on this client. How much time have I spent on this client versus their bill?
It's like equivalent of ask me anything.
Yeah.
Ask me anything. I understand all information within you.
That's the real powerful, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And being able to genuinely interpret that data and make it relevant, consumable. It is game. I've heard you use the word game changer. It really is, right?
I don't think it's overused term.
Yeah.
I generally don't. I think and we're only starting this journey. Some other things that AI could help with kind of risk and compliance monitoring. So analysing patterns, client profiles to identify red flags, unusual activity, regulatory risks. Faster detection and response. It's super important. We spoke to the Jersey regulator, and they're really excited about the possibilities around this technology. So that's what they want to see. Companies with fast detection and response measures in place, right? It's
and we want to, and naturally it makes sense to be able to provide that, and through some of these tools. So you're right, it's clear there's plenty of opportunities, and I have no doubt we could spend a world of time exploring use cases. And
I'm sure we'll have another episode on this.
Indeed, and all the rest of the clients that will come through that we talk and listen to will also explore the art of the possible there. But of course, it's not all opportunities and rainbows. But what about any concerns? There's a challenge around accuracy, trustworthiness. Does the hallucination challenges that can kind of come with with these tool sets, right?
That's a super important point. Yeah. Right? It's really crucial. We recognise this and have mitigations in place. AI models can be opaque, right? And when you apply them, if you apply that into a highly regulated environment, it can have kind of serious consequences if we get it wrong. So building trustworthy AI solutions, means that we have to bake in rigorous testing, and validation, and always, and this is super important. Always have kind of human in the loop processes to do that. There needs to be a human controlling this, but we're not just not in this business for deploying AI for the sake of AI, right? It has to be traceable, has to be defensible, and it has to be better than the manual alternative, right? So we consider kind of AI as a partner, right? We all use it every day, right? It's like your personal assistant, and it's like an expert assistant, but we have to evidence transparency, audit trails and control. And I think, that human element, the human judgment, the human review, the validation, especially when you're in kind of, there's potential legal or fiduciary implications. We have to have the human in the loop, right? So that's the rub with the AI. You just, but
I like that. It makes perfect sense. And Alex, and I expect the other component part there is something that you touched on a little bit earlier as well, which is, the concept of data quality well, right?
Yeah.
So if you want something to work, it needs to know what it's looking at.
You need good data, right? You need good data. And it's, it's a classic old adage, garbage in, garbage out, right? It applies more than ever here. AI's only as good. They're only as good as the data it feeds and it learns from. But we can train it with data, right? So all your kind of manuals and procedures and policy documents, we can train that's quite easy, right? But a lot of the problems are a bit more fundamental in terms of data quality. They're at the root of how you store and hold data, the fragmentation of data sources and multiple. So all that you need to have a really good kind of modern data architecture to ensure that the data is clean, well structured, and the data, these kind of disparate data sets, they're all connected together, right? So there's maybe a wee bit of work to do up front.
Indeed.
But the payback will be immense, right? If you can get the data quality up, feed it into the LLMs, fantastic.
It's so good to hear. And if you think about that, clearly, right, the work or the path that ultimately now, needs to take. Do you feel at the beginning of that kind of, I suppose, Gartner hype curve, or is the revolution just beginning? How fast is this going to move?
Right? This is going to move fast, right? I think, and I think we are genuinely at the very, very beginning of an AI revolution. I liken it to almost the industrial revolution in steroids. I think the possibilities here are almost endless. I think there are a few threats that we need to and I guess it creates a lot of tension, concern amongst those that are not. They're maybe a bit frightened by the tech. There's a lot of news around AI is going to replace jobs. But it's there. I think certainly what we're seeing, it's certainly getting used in the practical sense to repeat or take over kind of repetitive, mundane tasks. Free up people to think about higher value work, like client relationships, complex structuring, strategic working on strategy, enabling growth within the business. If you're not doing all that kind of mundane, repetitive stuff, then okay, well, put the kind of human capability and that unique human judgment to better use, right? They don't need to do that anymore. They're doing the real kind of high value stuff. And I think the other big thing is for the small companies, I think using AI can really help them punch above their weight.
Indeed.
Right? Historically, you need real deep pockets to embrace some of this, some of the cool tech.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't need that anymore.
No, you don't.
You really don't need that anymore. So
it's accessible.
It's accessible. It truly is open up so many doors and possibilities.
And that's beautifully articulated, and your passion actually can really kind of come through in the way that you're speaking there actually. And so to build on that and actually perhaps to move into the next kind of major thing I'd love to spend a small amount of time with you on is that art of the possible, right? We've looked at some of the enterprise technology. We've looked at how that's applicable to, the trust and corporate services sector, and of course the role of AI. But if we look ahead a little bit, what excites you most about the art of possible in this industry?
I think it's, you can tell, right? I think my head's buzzing, right?
Yeah.
My head's buzzing with possibilities. Just need to constrain my excitement somewhat, because we need to start somewhere, and we have been focused on very much foundational. You have to stick to kind of solid principles, engineering principles. When you're building a house, you have to start with the foundations, right? You have to start. You plough, I can't remember what the percentage is. It's like a ridiculous percentage of a total build cost into the foundation. It's essentially half. Most of it's underground, right?
Of course.
Nothing above. So we have been
Great
focusing
analogy.
a lot on the foundations because hopefully that should stand us in good stead.
It will.
Going forward, right? But there are so many possibilities. I think the idea is that we empower trust companies to operate with that kind of clarity, confidence and control, without friction, duplication, legacy baggage. They can really just focus on what they're in business to do and be about. Yeah, let us take a lot of that kind of pain away from you. And I think if you apply that kind of modern enterprise design, right? Because these core principles still remain, even with the advent of AI, right? But make sure everything's modular, composable, use sensible levels of automation, whether it's robotic or whether it's kind of non-deterministic kind of AI generated automation. Use AI for all these other use cases as well, but apply great data governance. Make sure we've got good data governance. Really, again, it's part of the kind of foundational element. It's all as good as your data. The data's driving everything, right? Make sure that data quality is really, really good. I think if we can get all that right, I think it's an enabler. It'll unlock, hopefully, a different way of working. You move away from kind of a more kind of reactive kind of administration model to hopefully proactive management.
Such a fantastic analogy, that actually the foundations, it's really genuinely really relatable. But if I asked you to sort of perhaps paint a picture for me, perhaps, and how it might actually sort of look in practice.
Yeah, well, we've got, we're out the ground. So we've done the foundation. So so actually something to look at. So here's a shameless plug. Check us out at www.optifiplatform.com.
Beautiful.
We've got a product video there which you can peruse and look at your leisure. I've got the lovely voice of Cara, our Chief Product Officer, and narrating
the voice of Optifi.
The voice of Optifi is fantastic. Fantastic. But just to bring it to life a little bit, right? So imagine a trust administrator logging into the dashboard in the morning. Instead of a kind of to-do list pulled from kind of emails and spreadsheets or anything else, right? All these other kind of tools that they can use. They see a kind of heavily curated workspace showing upcoming kind of deadlines, flagged risks, draft documents pre-prepared, and client communication templates, kind of all personalized, all dynamic, or a compliance team that they're not wading through loads and loads of policy documents or Excel checklists, but instead they're using the kind of semantic kind of compliance engine that we've built into our platform, right? That automatically kind of reads the regulatory updates, maps them to the entity structures, and proactively flags the impacts, right? So they've just
sounds wonderfully operationally efficient.
That's the art of the possible, but that's just the beginning, right? That's honestly just the beginning. Just a couple of examples.
No, I agree, and it's kind of lovely to hear that. I mean, it probably feels like it's a little bit more than just. It needs to be actually a little bit more than just a slick user interface.
Oh yeah,
a little bit more around genuine operational change to how you could work. And how you could drive efficiency. So forgive the cheesy phrase, you can do more with less. Right? As an organization, scale, grow, and take those things forward. Can I take you back quickly to, it's just something that sort of percolated in my mind actually, certainly when you think about the art of the possible and obviously the topic we touched on in the future. How do you think AI agents or that phrase, that agentic AI could play a role?
Yeah, it's a big buzzword. It's the buzzword of 2025, isn't it? Agentic AI.
Sure, I know what it means.
I'm super excited about this, right? I mean, it's like, I'm super excited, but also slightly terrified about the possibilities as well, right? Because the AI, traditionally everyone thinks of AI, they think of your kind of classical kind of ChatGPT model. You're engaging it, you're talking to it, you're getting data out. In a more efficient way than you ever thought imaginable, right? But the next step is to apply agency, what they call agency to the AI, models. So they're acting with agency, they're actually doing stuff, right? And that's the kind of transformational step, I think. Just so they're initiating processes, following up on tasks, escalating decisions automatically. So they're doing things automatically in the platform. These agents will integrate with APIs, right?
Yeah.
Again, with agency, ERP systems, CRM tools, document stores. They'll act across platforms, orchestrating things across what are current state kind of silos, and it's something that humans are not great at.
Yeah.
But they actually just do it. They'll do it like that. They'll do it almost instantly.
So that's what you're saying, right? It's, for my simple mind, I'm gonna take some information and I'm gonna go and do something with it. I'm gonna make something happen.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take action.
Yeah.
And of course, you'll have different, forgive the term, bots, as I humbly understand it, that will pick up different things and act as agents to push and pull data, execute certain tasks. It's quite a radical shift, isn't it? Really,
it is, but it is inevitable. But let's not forget, we need the human in the loop kind of oversight and validation, right? That's one of the kind of dangers. Yeah, if you unleash them all, especially in a complex kind of regulated and industry such as this, people are going to be terrified that they're going off. They're going off doing all this stuff. We need to make sure we've got that control framework. We've got the human in the loop review process before things actually, happen.
And to that point, Alex, genuinely, imagine I'm a trust director. Where do I start? Where do I start with this? That's a tough question, right?
Yeah.
You can say no.
You come speak to us. Because we'll help you get started. But I think you start getting clarity on your processes, right? You need to understand how you operate today. You need to understand your data, what all your pain points are, which is what we're talking to a lot of Trust goes about, right? We kind of open the conversation. Cara and I have opened the conversation and talk about all these kind of pain points, and it helps them understand what their current state is. Don't chase AI for the sake of it, right? We're living in all this hype. Don't feel pressurized to go and just pick the first kind of AI bot that you come across. Really focus on where are your team inefficient, in your view? Where are your team losing time? Where are we exposed to risk? What's costing more than you should or you would like? And then look for kind of small impact win, high impact wins. A bit of automation here, a data cleanup, right? The value in data cleanup could be huge, right?
Yeah,
but it doesn't need to be, so build momentum, build confidence, grow from there. You don't need to boil the ocean. Yeah, but you need to start with understanding how you're currently operating and then looking for all these kind of small, quick wins.
Alex, do you know what? That makes perfect sense. There might be grand ambitions, of course, but it's important to sort of start small and try and, execute at pace, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the things that perhaps to sort of help us wrap up a little bit, I would love to sort of hear from you a little bit more, put your CTO, right, that technology lens on things, explore a little bit, some of the culture that's there. So you've been in leadership roles for, a fair while, and now you're building this platform, right, from the ground up. From your perspective specifically, what do you feel it takes to deliver great enterprise technology in the space? Because that's where you're going, right? It's enterprise level technology. The team we've established is there to build something which operates at scale.
Absolutely. And I think for me, I've managed lots of teams across the globe. I think it comes down to kind of three things. For me, kind of culture, as you mentioned, curiosity, and then thirdly, control. So let's start with culture. I think in professional services, especially in trust, you need to create an environment where the technology is not feared, but embraced. You can't stand still with this stuff, right? Yeah, you're gonna have to embrace it, but you do it in a responsible way. But it really does mean you need to build trust between kind of technology or IT and in the business. And avoid kind of old school kind of order taker kind of mentality where tech team, you just go and do that.
Do you feel that still exists? That
less,
line
it's becoming less.
and the struggle between
we need to move
to the business and the
truly
tech team.
kind of shared accountability model. Yeah, and I think traditionally there has been that kind of invisible line between the business and the tech team. Yeah, but we, the tech team, know a lot about the business as well, right? And we can help shape your reasoning.
Yeah.
Help shape your strategy, discuss the art of the possible, right? How to leverage technology properly. But yeah, I think it is something that still exists to some degree, that kind of barrier.
But importantly, you need the tech team, right? To be able to, you need your organization to be able to establish, maintain an appropriate level of control.
Yeah. So I think, there's control. So yes, I guess we're still talking about culture. We'll come on to control in a second, but
of course.
I think if you view tech, I think it's really important. We just probably delve a wee bit deeper into this one. If you view tech purely as a kind of support function, right, you genuinely miss a strategic opportunity. Tech needs to be in the room, right, where the decisions are made. That's what I'm just loving this. The startup culture, right?
Yeah.
And I come from Cara comes from big enterprise corporate. There's multiple layers between the people that do stuff and the people that kind of define stuff. And then
it's a great way of articulating.
There's so many kind of proxying of information through layers before it gets to people to do stuff. It's like what enough? Just get people together in the room. So not follow that kind of order taker mentality, and I think that kind of brings me on to that's a kind of cultural cultural pivot. But that then brings me on to the kind of third of the three, right? Curiosity. So the best tech teams, and quite frankly, the best companies in the world, I think, always ask why. Do this all the time, right? It's probably annoying, but this is what kind of drives out innovation. It makes sure you don't spend like 18 months, 2 years building something only to find that people don't actually, it doesn't fit, it's not fit for purpose, or it's not, it's not needed anymore. So we want to ask why. Why do we run this report every Monday? Why does that happen? Why do we rekey this data 3 times, right? Why does this process exist the way it does? In some cases, why does this process exist?
Because we've always done it this way, Alex, surely.
Yeah. So a curious team uncovers insights, right? And that fuels innovation, right? Because we've got get our heads buzzing with all these kind of ideas, and the innovation is not just in terms of AI or automation, but smarter workflows, better experiences, tighter controls, and I think we've brought together what I think is an incredibly strong founding team with decades of experience, right, in the financial services in general, but also within this sector. So you, Al, Stuart, CEO, Tish, Chief Strategy Officer, you've got such far-reaching knowledge of how things work today, and how things should work if we just given a chance to kind of reimagine this, right? Couple that with Cara's fantastic kind of product leadership. I genuinely think we're in such a unique position here to kind of redefine the technology solution for the industry.
So do you feel, pulling a small bit on that as well, do you feel like it's important to have a balance between formality and freedom?
Yeah, I think that brings us nicely, I guess, onto the kind of control aspect, right? I think it's control's misunderstood, right? You think you're gonna put some kind of control here, right? You think, oh my goodness, you're gonna put some red tape, rigidity. I think it's more about discipline, right? Architectural discipline, or do things properly. So come back to the foundations thing again, right? You do things properly, don't accumulate risk or technical debt. Another kind of debt, probably a lot of people have heard of technical debt. I also like to think there's something called complexity debt as well. So we need to be very mindful that we don't accumulate complexity debt, where things get so complex that it becomes almost unmaintainable, right? So it reduces kind of pace. It means that we can't keep up with the competition. It means we can't keep up with the regulator. So, so apply some discipline, apply some core principles. It's not, so put some control in place, but it's more about discipline than anything to avoid some of these kind of pitfalls.
I really quite like that, actually, that concept of complexity debt, because obviously naturally you'll hear in the industry the concept of technology debt, which of course so many firms will wrestle with, especially when they're looking to connect multiple platforms, through with multiple different sort of facets and areas of functionality. But I really like what you're saying there. It resonates, right? That trio, culture, curiosity, and control, as something that throughout the industry should be a core, at the core of how it wants to work, right?
Yeah, I think there's that kind of fine line between empowerment and entropy. I love the fact that people are trying to solve problems, right? I'm a natural problem solver, right? So pick up the tools. It shows initiative, right? It shows the need, right? They wouldn't be picking up if there wasn't a need. But we've also seen the risks associated. We touched on it earlier. Potentially a mess, right? Excel sheets, power and regulatory processes, unsupported kind of mission critical flows. So what we want to do is Optifi want to capture the agility, but wrap it in governance and design principles, right? These kind of core, that discipline I was talking about, right? And make it kind of safe, scalable and supportable.
Brilliant. Alex, I think that's a perfect note to close on, right? It's been incredibly insightful, actually, to kind of hear your voice around some of the big topics in the industry. Certainly from an enterprise tech, exploring the art of the possible and along AI, I've found it deeply joyous, actually, to kind of go through those things. So is there anything that you'd like to sort of hand off or leave as a sort of final note for listeners? Any sort of final gambit?
Oh, that's a good question. By the way, I've loved being here. It's been a great, great conversation. I think I probably just want to iterate. I think we're just getting started, right? And
in the industry, right? The opportunities.
And I've mentioned the team. I think we're all kind of pulling together really, really well. But probably just want to kind of mention maybe we're not building everything, because we need to progress at pace. So we are going to be partnering up with lots of kind of cool, innovative people as well, and that's where the kind of advantage of that kind of composable architecture we talked about earlier comes in. So we integrate them with them quickly, effectively, but it means that I think we'll get to parity with hopefully the incumbent players pretty quickly. So I think that's an important aspect. We're not building everything. We're partnering with lots of great other innovative companies as well.
Innovation at the heart. Alex, thank you so much for your time and your insights. As mentioned, generally enjoyed.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Al.
Cheers, buddy.
Pleasure.